Inirekomenda ng Senate Blue Ribbon Committee na sampahan ng mga kasong katiwalian, perjury, falsification of public document, kasong administratibo at sibil ang mga dati at kasalukuyang opisyal ng Department of Education, DepEd, at Procurement Service ng Department of Budget and Management, PS-DBM, na sangkot sa umano'y 2.4 billion pesos overpriced na pagbili ng laptop. Sa 177 pahinang committee report, inirekomenda na kasuhan sina USEC Alain del Pascua, USEC Analyn Sevilla, ASEC Salvador Malana III, Director Abram Abanil, PS-DBM OIC Director Lloyd Christopher Lao, PS-DBM Acting Director Jasonmer Uayan, BAC Chairman Ulysses Mora, at iba pang miyembro ng Secretariat at staff. Habang isang count ng falsification of public documents, at isang count ng paglabag sa Section 3A ng Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, laban kina Sevilla at dating Executive Assistant Alec Ladanga. Tunghayan po natin ang buong detalye sa Senate Blue Hearing
Committee Secretary is directed to read the dispositive portion of Committee Report number 19 relative to the laptop deal. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Executive Summary. Inquiry on the alleged overpriced and outdated laptops procured by the Department of Education. Because schools became physically inaccessible due to the COVID-19 pandemic, DepEd endeavored to adjust to the new normal as everyone became heavily reliant on technology. Now, bearing the brunt of the laptop deal between DepEd and PS-DBM are the public school teachers. Instead of enhancing teaching and learning capacities, the actions of DepEd and PS-DBM officials were to the detriment of public service. After the conduct of 5 hearings and based on the evidence presented, the Blue Ribbon Committee's findings are as follows. 1. The contract for the supply and delivery of laptop computers for public school teachers under the 2021 DepEd Laptop for Teachers Procurement Project was overpriced by at least 979 million pesos. There is sufficient basis to believe that there was a conspiracy to facilitate and/or generate an overprice, which indicates manifest partiality, evident bad faith, and/or gross inexcusable neglect on the part of senior officials and staff of the DepEd and the PS-DBM. While they may seemingly act separately, concerted acts were evident to create an opportunity for favored bidders to submit bloated and excessive bids, leading to an overprice in the purchase of the laptops. The repeated changes by DepEd in the use and allocation of the 2.4 billion pesos from tables to mobile connectivity loads for students.
I think you can be corrected, not tables, tablets.
Sorry, my mistake. From tablets to mobile connectivity loads for students and then to laptops for teachers is highly arbitrary, unjustified, improper, and not beneficial to DepEd teachers and students. Number 4, the outsourcing of procurement tasks by DepEd to PS-DBM contravenes Section 7.3.3 of the 2016 revised Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act 9184, as DepEd has the proficiency and capability to undertake the procurement. Further, rather than hastening the procurement, the transfer to PS-DBM delayed it. The Memorandum of Agreement entered into by DepEd and PS-DBM dated 16 February 2021 was antedated, as it was only signed on 28 May 2021, thereby making the procurement activities conducted irregular and questionable. In this regard, the obligating of the funds supposedly for the procurement of the laptops on 18 February 2021 without the said Memorandum of Agreement in place is likewise irregular and questionable. The increase of the unit price component of the approved budget for the contract from 35,036 pesos and 50 centavos to 58,300 pesos, which caused the reduction of the quantity of the laptops, is highly irregular. It was generated from a manipulated market survey and price analysis of PS-DBM, which was accepted and approved by DepEd without question. The Special Bids and Awards Committee, head of the procuring entity of PS-DBM, and the officials of DepEd caused grave and undue injury and prejudice to the DepEd and our public school teachers when they procured and accepted the Dell Latitude 3420 with Intel Celeron 1.8 gigahertz processor, despite said processor being below the specifications stated in the bidding documents. Contrary to the avowed purpose of the procurement, which is to ensure that teachers will have the necessary tools to conduct classes through online learning, the Dell Latitude 3420 procured were given to a large number of non-teaching personnel, about 12%, and as testified by teachers and the Commission on Audit, the laptops are too slow because the processor is Intel Celeron, which is outdated, and the price is too high considering the specifications. On the basis of its findings, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee recommends the following. The abolition of PS-DBM, and to require government departments, agencies, office instrumentalities, including GOCCs, SUCs, and local governments, to conduct their own procurement as an exercise of their fiduciary duty to be accountable for public funds appropriated for their respective offices. 2, amend Republic Act No. 9184 to provide for transparency and accountability requirements for joint venture entities or arrangements participating in public biddings. 3, amend Republic Act No. 9184 to provide for transparency and accountability safeguards during the planning and pre-bidding stages of public procurement, including but not limited to the setting of the ABC and technical specifications of goods, services, or infrastructure to be procured. Number 4, recovery of the overprice in the amount of at least 979 million pesos as proceeds of corruption, and the amount actually recovered to be placed in a special National Teachers Trust Fund to support the health and medical needs of public school teachers and the educational needs of their children through a special scholarship program. Next, the immediate conduct of a special fraud audit by the Commission on Audit to examine the various accounts and financial documents related to the overpricing of the laptops and determine relevant accountability. Next, request an AMLC, Anti-Money Laundering Council investigation on the overpriced procurement, including an inquiry into bank deposits of the public officials identified in this investigation. Next, request the BIR to conduct a special tax compliance audit or a tax fraud audit inquiry to determine whether the proper taxes were paid on the income of the joint venture consortium partners. Next, the filing of criminal and administrative cases against the officials of DepEd and PS-DBM to include the following. 1 count of violation of Section 3E of Republic Act No. 3019, otherwise known as the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, against the following officials of the Department of Education. 1. Former Undersecretary Alain del Pascua. 2. Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla. 3. Former Assistant Secretary Salvador C. Malana III. 4. Director Abram Y.C. Abanil. The following officials of the Procurement Service and the Department of Budget and Management. 1. Former OIC Executive Director Lloyd Christopher Lao. 2. Former OIC Executive Director Jasonmer Uayan. 3. BAC Chairman Ulysses Mora, as well as the other members of SBAC 1 and SBAC TWG and Secretariat, whether from DepEd or from PS-DBM. Number 4, Engineer Marwan O. Amil. And principals, representatives, and agents of the joint venture consortium partners or other private parties who may have concluded and or conspired as supported by competent evidence with the above-mentioned officials. 1 count for the violation of Section 3G of Republic Act 3019, otherwise known as the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, against the following officials of the Department of Education. 1. Former Undersecretary Alain del Pascua. 2. Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla. 3. Former Assistant Secretary Salvador C. Malana III. The following officials also of the Procurement Service and the Department of Budget and Management. Former OIC Executive Director Lloyd Christopher Lao. Former OIC Executive Director Jasonmer Uayan. BAC Chairman Ulysses Mora, as well as the other members of SBAC 1 and SBAC TWG and Secretariat, whether from DepEd or PS-DBM, as well as principals, representatives, and or agents of the joint venture consortium partners or other private parties who may have colluded and or conspired as supported by competent evidence with the aforementioned officials. 1 count of falsification of public document by a public official defined and penalized under Article 171 of the Revised Penal Code against the following officials of the Department of Education. Number 1, Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla. Number 2, former Executive Assistant Alec Ladanga. Next, 1 count for violation of Section 3A of Republic Act 3019, otherwise known as the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, against the following officials of the Department of Education. 1, Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla, and 2, former Executive Assistant Alec Ladanga. Next, multiple counts of perjury defined and penalized under Article 1A3 of the Revised Penal Code as amended by Republic Act number 11594 against the following officials of the Department of Education. Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla, former Undersecretary Alain del Pascua, former Assistant Secretary Salvador Malana III, former OIC Executive Director Lloyd Christopher Lao, and former OIC Executive Director Jasonmer Uayan of the PS-DBM. In addition, the following actions are recommended. Number 1, the administrative and disciplinary investigations for multiple counts of grave misconduct, serious dishonesty, gross neglect of duty, and conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service be likewise initiated against the aforementioned senior officials of the Department of Education and the Procurement Service of the Department of Budget and Management as may be applicable. Number 2, that the Commission on Audit issue notices of disallowance for the overprice in the purchase of the laptops in the total amount of at least 979 million pesos against the following officials of the Department of Education: Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla, former Undersecretary Alain del Pascua, former Assistant Secretary Salvador Malana III. Number 3, on the basis of Presidential Decree Number 1445, otherwise known as the Government Auditing Code of the Philippines, that civil complaints be initiated against the following officials and personnel of the Department of Education, as well as against officials of the Procurement Service of the Department of Budget and Management, to collect and recover the value of the overprice in the amount of at least 979 million pesos, including accrued interest and damages, and that they be held jointly and solidarily liable therefor. Number 1, Undersecretary Analyn Sevilla, former Undersecretary Alain del Pascua, former Assistant Secretary Salvador Malana III, former OIC Executive Director Lloyd Christopher Lao, former OIC Executive Director Jasonmer Uayan, and other DepEd and PS-DBM officials that may be shown by competent evidence to be responsible for government funds or uses of government property in violation of law and relevant regulations. Finally, let a copy of this committee report be furnished the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, the Office of the Ombudsman, the Commission on Audit, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, the Office of the Solicitor General, and the Bureau of Immigration for their information and appropriate action, including but not limited to the conduct of preliminary investigation and administrative adjudication, a special fraud audit, a tax compliance review of a tax or a tax fraud audit, legal action to recover proceeds of corruption, and an investigation of possible money laundering activities of public officials identified in this investigation if the law and evidence so warrants, as well as the issuance of the proper immigration lookout bulletin orders or ILBO against those concerned when necessary and as provided by law and existing regulations.
Comsec, so you have heard the dispositive, the executive summary of the dispositive portion. Papasok na po ito sa plenary. We'll be showing you the complete documents in a little while. 197 pages, 5 exhaustive hearings conducted by the Blue Ribbon Committee, hundreds of pages of transcripts, including TSNs and documentary evidence. Ito po yung nabuong konklusyon, base po sa batas, as base po sa ebidensya. Ito po yung lumabas. Wala po siguro kayong tanong.
Sir? So sir, wala kayong nakita na any liability ni former DepEd Secretary Leonor Briones?
We will be providing you a copy. Siguro ilalatag na lang sa lamesa mamaya. You take note of page 159. Page 159 of the committee report would mention how the former secretary may have unwittingly approved the new parameters which increase the price and decrease the quantity of laptops to be purchased. Nagamit po siya sa wikang Tagalog.
Sir, pero yung legal liability, wala siya.
Sa ebidensya po lumabas, wala. base po sa ebidensya. Iba po yung spekulasyon, iba po yung haka-haka, iba naman po yung lumabas sa hearing. Lahat po ng ginawa natin ay base po sa ebidensya at base po sa batas. Pero kung meron po tayong sariling spekulasyon o haka-haka, isa-isang tabi muna natin yon.
Senator,
Sir,
iyan po,
clarification.
nabanggit sa hearing nandun si Abisado, siya ba wala ring liability? Hindi po siya nabanggit sa mga pangalan?
Hindi po nabanggit dito ang dating Secretary of DBM kasi hindi rin po papunta sa kanya yung ebidensya at yung mga testimonya at yung mga dokumentong nakalap.
Sir, clarification. Yun dun sa 979 million na dapat ibalik, paano po yun? To be collected, paano yung magiging procedure?
Nasa Sandigan Bayan na po yan kung paano po makukuha po yan, pero siguro ang isang mainam na tanong, uunahan ko na kayo, baka walang magtanong, paano po na-compute yung 979? Ang exact figures po noon ay 979,359,873.74. Meron pong computation po dito, base po sa mga dokumento, nagsimula po ito sa dokumentong yung sales invoice, yung dokumento na lumabas po sa final receipt, at yung dokumento rin po na nagpapatunay ng actual na presyo kung saan pasok naman po yung reasonable allowable profit of 15% at lumalabas po na malaki po yung overprice. Ulitin ko po, liliwanagin ko. Yung salita pong overprice ay nanggaling sa Commission on Audit. Ilang beses po nilang paulit-ulit na sinabi, base po sa kanilang COA report at doon sa testimonya ng dumalo po sa mga hearings na merong overprice. Hindi po sa committee nagsimula yung salitang overprice, yung po ay nanggaling sa Commission on Audit. Pero meron po tayong computation kung bakit po umabot sa 979,000 plus. Nakakuha rin po tayo ng dokumento galing po doon sa bill of lading sa People's Republic of China kung ano talaga yung halaga ng laptop. So, nandito po lahat yan. Ilalatag namin po yan dito kung gusto nyo tingnan mamaya. Iiwan ko po yan dito. Pwede nyo silipin, maging yung signed copy ng committee report number 19 kasi baka ang tanong naman ng iba, sino yung nakalagda. Titingnan nyo na lang yan. Hindi ko na babanggitin. 12 senators signed. 11 senators voted for this report. 1 dissented. The identities, probably the records will just show.
So you're confident, sir, na ma-adapt ito sa plenary? Considering
Siguro po, base po sa ebidensya. Majority report po ito.
Sir, dissented, walang reason na in-indicate dun sa when that senator signed, when he indicated or she indicated that he is dissenting?
Out of respect to my colleague, siguro hindi ko na mababanggit yan. Ginagalang ko po ang kapasyahan kahit sino pong miyembro ng Senado. May kanya-kanya pong kapasyahan yan at dapat po yan ay irespeto at igalang.
Sir, yung kay Secretary Briones sa palagay niyong nagamit siya, wala pong liability yan, sir, at least negligence po on her.
The mere mention here is in effect an admonition on the part of the Blue Ribbon directed to former Secretary Briones. Siguro maganda makita niyo yung page 159 to 160. Even engineer or is yan engineer Bragado, attorney ata yun? Attorney Bragado was admonished by the Blue Ribbon. Bakit hindi niya maaga isiniwalat yung kanyang nalalaman? Hindi na lang nabasa yon. Sa kapal po kasi nito, baka abutin tayo ng 5 oras dito. Pirma doon, nakapirma siya doon sa mga unang dokumento, yung pagpapalit-palit. Nagsimula tayo sa pang-load, napunta sa tablet, napunta sa laptop. Meron siyang isang signature doon bago nagkaroon na ng delegation doon sa committee na pinamumunuan ng isang undersecretary.
Sir, nag-advise ba yung minority? Kasi according to Minority Leader Coco Pimentel, kung merong hindi na-discuss comprehensively dito sa report, magsasubmit sila ng supplement report.
I think so. But I think you were there. They participated extensively. They were diligent in attending, and they signed the committee report.
Okay.
They signed the committee report.
So sir, magsasubmit daw sila ng supplemental?
I heard through the grapevine na magsasubmit sila. Sa'yo, ikaw ata yung grapevine. Hindi.
Sir,
Biro lang yun.
Sir, clarification din. Ano may pananagutan ba yung mga nag-supply? Yung mga nag-supply
Nabanggit
na
na
laptop?
rito nabanggit na rito. Alam mo, lahat naman yung mga yan allowed ng margin of profit. Pero yung siguro dun sa testimonya, may nagsasabi na tama yung diniliver, may nagsasabi, pinaninindigan nila na yung kapasidad ng laptop ay sang-ayon doon sa requirements. Pero lumalabas sa na-deliver, hindi tugma. At minabalitaan din kayo, siguro sa mga kasamahan nyo, sa Cebu, meron na benta na sa secondary market na laptop. Auction. Second hand.